This is the K67 kiosk, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It looks like something out of this world, as if it came from outer space. But it was designed in the 1960s in Cold War Yugoslavia, a socialist nation. This space-age glossy cube reflected the country's struggle with its identity. On one hand, the K67 was prefabricated, modular, and reminiscent of socialism's imperatives for production efficiency, standardization, and order. On the other, it was produced precisely for the sort of person that most socialist nations were trying to discourage. The kiosk provided affordable and flexible commercial spaces for small businesses and entrepreneurs. They were incubators for capitalism and individualism. This contradiction was apparent just by looking at it in its natural environment. Against the harsh edges of Yugoslavia's concrete, brutalist landscape, this bright, soft little cube defied its surroundings and supposedly the principles of the state in which it was created. So how did something like this come to existence in a place like this? Well, Yugoslavia is a nation of contradictions, and this plastic kiosk is a lens into its soul. Despite its appearances, the K67 kiosk was initially designed with Yugoslav socialist principles in mind. Its glossy plastic finish was chosen because, under socialism, plastic was the material of the future. Where Western capitalist nations may have seen it as a crude or low-quality material due to its association with mass production, socialist Yugoslavia saw it as a testament to mankind's scientific mastery over nature. It was a space-age material. Its affordability and mass production were also the exact things that attracted designers to it. Unlike an expensive, elitist material, like let's say mahogany, plastic wasn't a bourgeois indulgence, but a means of achieving equality by driving down production costs and raising product lifespans. Plastic was the material of functional and rational socialist design. In that vein, the kiosk's designer, Saša Mächtig, envisioned these structures as part of an ordered system of social conditioning. In capitalist nations, consumerism is unbound. It invades the consciousness of the public at every turn. In Yugoslavia, consumerism could be made more socialist through the contained nature of these kiosks. One would never be seduced by the seemingly unending aisles of products that you might find in an American supermarket, because you couldn't get lost in a kiosk. The process of consumption was far less atomizing. Instead of standing in a crowd of other shoppers picking through an endless sea of products, you stood face to face with a kiosk attendant and asked for precisely what you needed and nothing more. The opportunities for anonymous, impulse-based purchases were severely limited by the kiosk's design and placement within a public space. If you did decide to indulge in a spot of frivolous consumption, the eyes of the person in the queue behind you would burrow into the back of your head, judging your every move. It was a means of promoting social discipline and dissuading the perceived chaos of free market capitalist consumerism. The K67 also featured prefabricated modular paneling made of polyurethane, steel, and glass. This meant that multiple kiosk sections could be combined together, creating something that looked more like a space station than a place of business. The point of this was to make the kiosk as flexible and affordable as possible to facilitate a variety of commercial purposes. Sofia Kovacic, a Yugoslav businesswoman, could use the kiosk on weekdays to sell coffee and newspapers to passing workers. And on weekends, when people came out to relax, she could transform it into an ice cream stand. If demand ever increased, she could add new modules to meet it. The flexible little kiosk could grow with her business without the burden of massive property overheads. Odoo can do the same for your business today. Odoo gives you the power of dozens of business management apps, all in one centralized platform at an affordable price. Like Sofia, who can add modules to her kiosk, you can also grow by adding more apps as you need them, and save money at the same time. From website building to accounting, Odoo does it all.
Your first application is free for life, with unlimited hosting and support. Check out Odoo and potentially save hundreds on business expenses by clicking my link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. While the kiosk's commercial flexibility might seem rather capitalistic and out of place, it actually fit Yugoslavia's brand of socialism rather well. You see, its economy was a sort of hybrid system between a Western free market and Soviet command economy. The party in Yugoslavia did not completely control the market in principle. Instead, it allowed companies, collectively owned by workers' councils, to determine resource allocation and production on a case-by-case basis, informed by supply and demand. In doing so, the state hoped to lay the groundwork for a society that would not require a government. The system aimed to socialize the population to be self-sufficient and cooperative. The supposed short-term benefits of this were that they avoided an inefficient bureaucracy divorced from consumer needs on the ground, and simultaneously ensured workers reaped the rewards of their labor. It was a regulated system where the state was to act as a custodian to the market, rather than its chief director. The system was called self-management. The workers managed the economy, and not the party elites. This meant that the Yugoslav state, despite being socialist, encouraged a consumer economy and asked its workers to be its managers, to assess and meet supply and demand. This was the perfect political and economic environment for the K67. Affordable, mobile, and easily converted, it could be deployed to meet market demands anywhere, at any time, for any purpose. Yugoslav self-management principles provided the kiosk with the perfect reason to exist. It could be a ski lift, a ticket booth, a newspaper kiosk, a shoe shiner's shop, a hot dog stand, or an information centre. And to keep everything ordered and purpose-driven, the colour of the kiosk would reflect its function. White was for ticket booths, red was for newsstands, green and brown were for food stalls and cafes. In the words of the historian Rujana Rebarnjak, the designer Machtig hoped that categorizing consumption in this way would, quote, produce a more cultured urban environment, as well as eliminate the alienation engendered by capitalist consumption practices. But despite the design of the kiosk being in keeping with Yugoslavia's socio-political imperatives, it ended up facilitating unintended capitalist tendencies. Its modularity allowed its operators to sprawl across public spaces and create private fiefdoms. They would extend even further outwards by placing chairs, tables, benches, and temporary patios alongside the confines of the main structure, all in the hopes of increasing revenue. According to Rebarnjak, this was enabled by the nature of these kiosks being small enough to slip through the cracks of government regulations. This was the exact thing that Yugoslav socialists wanted to avoid. In 1967, as the kiosk was being designed, a newspaper in the Yugoslav capital of Belgrade reported on the widespread suspicion, presumably among party members, that small, private enterprises represented embryonic capitalism. 2 years later, as the kiosks were being rolled into city centres across the country, their fears became reality. But it wasn't quite a surprise that capitalism found a way to germinate in Yugoslavia. In 1948, it was ejected from the communist big boy club Cominform, which hosted all the major European communist and socialist countries. 2 years later, after a painful divorce, the state's leaders decided to turn around and open up to the West. They became a state that preached socialist values but engaged in a cultural osmosis with the arch-capitalist enemy. It was a strange contradiction, and it caused the Yugoslav population to acculturate to Western norms far more than any other Eastern Bloc country. For example, the K67 designer Saša Mächtig chose red to be its standard colour not because it reflected socialism, but because it was eye-catching and trendy with Italian designers, which appeared to betray the sort of capitalist thinking that you might find in an American marketing or design firm. But his approach was also a product of Yugoslavia. Design and urban planning in the state often struggled to mediate the individual and the collective, to
to strike a balance between the overreach of the Soviets and the economic anarchy of the capitalists. This was because the state saw consumerism as a way to prove to its population that socialist self-management worked, that it could provide all the same benefits of capitalism while avoiding its deficiencies through socialist discipline. This led to a constant juggling act for designers, businesses, and politicians. Consumerism was to be central to Yugoslav society, yes, but you had to make sure it didn't go too far. So Mächtig's apparently contradictory approach is reflective of this. He tried to create a micro-environment that promoted and facilitated consumption, but also codified and controlled it. The K67 kiosk, then, is a product that represented Yugoslavia's unique ambition to combine elements of both capitalist and communist ideologies and engineer a modern, socialist consumer culture. Ultimately, though, the K67, like the state itself, failed to bring that vision to life. In 1998, the Swedish photographer Magnus Bartas called these kiosks satellites. Tiny, extraterrestrial-looking specks of capitalism in a vast cosmos of collectivism. He believed that they had been signs of changing times, omens of a paradigm shift, the collapse of socialism and the ascendancy of capital. Indeed, as we all know, capitalism did end up eclipsing the Red Star. In 1991, Yugoslavia shattered into nearly half a dozen successor states that hated each other with a passionate intensity, leading to a 10-year-long independence conflict. But before the fall, these kiosks, due to some clever international marketing on the side of Mächtig, found their way all over the world, as far as New Zealand and Japan. Most of them, as one might expect, ended up in Eastern Bloc socialist countries whose economies were more closely linked with that of Yugoslavia's. In 2000, the factory that produced these kiosks, Imgrad, went out of business, meaning that all the surviving K67s out there are at least 25 years old, most even more. All of them are now out of context, out of place, and out of time. Spare parts are hard to come by, and they're becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Copycat kiosks have popped up all over the world in their stead, in varying degrees of quality, making the originals that much harder to pinpoint. Soon, the K67 will vanish, just as the state that birthed it did. Magnus Bartas called these kiosks satellites because he thought they were foreign anomalies, uniquely unsocialist creations in a socialist nation. I think he's wrong. I think they were as Yugoslav as you could get. In a way, though, he was right in calling them satellites. In surviving the state, they were released from its orbit to drift and fade away. In the vacuum under the blistering sun, the plastic will warp, the paint peel away, the rubber crack and disintegrate, and the K67 will one day flicker out of existence, like a star's last breath in the night sky.